I was 19 when it started, a sophomore at a mid sized university in upstate New York, majoring in literature with a minor in psychology. I was the kind of student who sat in the front row, always raised my hand, always stayed after class to ask one more question. I wasn't trying to be a teacher's pet, I just really loved to learn. That semester, I was taking a seminar called Trauma and Narrative. The professor was Dr. Raymond, early 40s, charismatic, sharp, the kind of man who made the room go quiet when he entered. He didn't speak loudly, but everyone leaned in when he talked. There was something about him, controlled, almost magnetic. He noticed me early. In the second week, he stopped me after class and asked if I'd consider being his research assistant. Said I had a rare insight, that I read between the lines, that he could tell I understood the deeper layers. I was flattered. I said yes. The meeting started off simple. We'd talk about student papers, theoretical frameworks, trauma theory, but then he'd ask about my own experiences. What drew me to the subject? Had I ever lived through anything traumatic myself? He asked it gently, like it was casual, like he cared. I told him some things, not everything, enough to make it seem like we were building trust. And maybe I wanted to believe we were. It felt powerful to be seen by someone like him. Then came the late meetings. After his office hours ended, after the hallway lights were dim, he'd ask me to stay a little longer, to help him organize notes or just discuss new material. I didn't think much of it at first, until the night he closed the door. He said it was so we wouldn't be disturbed. He started talking about how trauma wasn't just academic, how it lived in the body, how survivors often seek out reenactments. His tone was calm, almost clinical, but his eyes were fixed on me. He said he could help me process things, help me feel safe in my body again. I remember not knowing what to say. I remember nodding, politely, confused. Then he stepped closer. He didn't touch me that night, but something shifted. A boundary had been crossed, and I knew it. I thought about dropping the seminar, but I didn't. Part of me didn't want to give up the opportunity. Part of me thought I was imagining it, that maybe I had misread him, that someone like Dr. Raymond wouldn't do something like that. The next time I went to his office, he offered me tea, said it was a calming ritual. He poured it himself. We drank in silence for a moment. Then he said he had read my latest reflection paper 3 times. He said it was beautiful, brave, vulnerable. Then he asked me to read it out loud. I did. I didn't realize until later how shaky my voice had been, or how he'd closed the blinds while I read. After that, the meetings got stranger, longer. He started using words like intimacy and containment. He said healing wasn't linear, that sometimes boundaries had to be tested, that he trusted me. One afternoon, he placed his hand over mine while I was taking notes. I froze. He smiled, said, "It's okay. You're safe here." I didn't feel safe, but I didn't move my hand either. And that moment, that's the one I replay the most. Not the worst one, not the clearest, but the one that taught me how silence can feel like consent. After that, it escalated. He started touching my shoulder when I walked in, sitting closer, asking if I was seeing anyone, telling me I had an old soul, that I was unlike anyone he had ever taught. And I wanted to believe him, because I wanted it to mean something. I wanted to feel special, not trapped. But the truth is, I didn't know how to say no, and he knew that. They always do. After that day in his office, I started feeling like I was living in 2 worlds. There was the world I showed everyone else, where I smiled in class, turned in my assignments, went to group study sessions, and laughed when someone made a joke. And then there was the other world, the one that existed in the quiet spaces between moments, in office hours, in shadows, in the way my body tensed anytime someone touched my arm, even casually. I didn't tell anyone, not at first. I thought about it. I'd sit in my dorm room late at night, phone in hand, hovering over my roommate's contact or my advisor's email. But I didn't know how to start. What do you even say? My professor makes me uncomfortable, sounds vague, weak, especially when everyone else thought he was brilliant. They loved him. In class, girls laughed a little louder when he spoke. Boys quoted him like scripture. Faculty invited him to panels, conferences, lectures. He was their rising star. And I was just another student. He didn't hurt me, yet. Not physically. But that's what made it harder to explain. There were no bruises, no evidence. Only the growing knot in my stomach every time I saw his name pop up in my inbox. He started messaging me more, late at night. At first, it was about class, then about my writing, then about me, my smile, the way I carried myself, how mature I was for my age. I started dreading the sound of email notifications. I deleted some without reading them. Others I opened and reread obsessively, wondering if maybe I was misinterpreting. But no, I wasn't. He knew exactly what he was doing. One evening, I was walking back from the library when I heard someone call my name. I turned and saw him leaning against a lamppost near the parking lot. He smiled, said he'd just finished dinner nearby, asked if I needed a ride. I said no, quickly, politely. He didn't insist, just said, "Be careful out here. It gets dark early." My skin crawled the rest of the way back to my dorm. That night, I wrote everything down, every interaction, every time he touched my shoulder, every email, every closed-door meeting. I filled 8 pages. I didn't know what I would do with them, but I needed to get it out of my head. A week later, during class, he announced he'd be holding an optional weekend retreat for students in the seminar. A chance to go deeper into the material, he said, at a cabin he owned 2 hours outside the city. Everyone seemed excited. I felt like I was going to vomit. After class, he pulled me aside, said he hoped I'd come, that he had something special planned for the group. Then he looked at me and added, "Some conversations are better away from campus." That night, I took my 8 pages and walked across campus to the Title I-X office. The lights were on. The door was locked. I knocked until someone opened it. The woman inside listened as I spoke. Her name was Rachel. She didn't look shocked, just tired. She asked questions, took notes, said they'd look into it, said it was good I came forward. I walked back to my dorm in the rain, my shoes soaked, my hands shaking, but I felt lighter. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. A week passed, then another. No one contacted me. In class, Dr. Raymond acted like nothing had happened. He still smiled at me, still called on me more than anyone else, still sent emails late at night. I checked the Title IX portal every day. No updates. Then, one day, Rachel emailed, said they had spoken to him, that he denied everything, that there was no actionable evidence, that my report would be kept on file, but no further steps would be taken. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I threw my laptop across the room. It didn't break. I wish it had. The next day, I skipped class. And the day after that. By the end of the week, I couldn't bring myself to leave my room. I stopped answering messages, stopped eating, stopped sleeping. I kept thinking, why did I say anything? Why did I trust them? But deep down, I knew why. Because no one had ever warned me how institutional silence works. Because no one had ever told me what it feels like when the place that promised to protect you decides you're inconvenient. Because I needed someone to say, I believe you. And no one did. So I started talking to the only person who never left, myself. And the voice in my head said, get up, we're not done yet. The following week, I made myself get dressed and go to class. I walked into the seminar room 5 minutes late. Everyone looked up. Dr. Raymond smiled. He said, nice to have you back. We missed your insights. I sat down without looking at him. My hands trembled beneath the desk. I felt like everyone could see what I was hiding. But they couldn't. No one said a word. After class, he asked me to stay back. I said I had another appointment. He didn't argue. He just nodded, and I walked away. For a few days, things were quiet. He didn't email me, didn't approach me. I let myself believe it was over. Then a letter arrived in my campus mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed. One line. Some truths are better left buried. No signature. I stared at it for a long time. I felt fear. And then I felt rage. Because I had spent weeks being silent, being polite, being careful. And he still found a way to make me feel powerless. But I wasn't powerless. Not anymore. So I folded the letter, took a picture of it. Then I walked it right back to the Title IX office and demanded a second meeting. Rachel looked tired again, but she didn't turn me away. She asked me to sit down. This time, I brought printed emails, the note, the 8-page journal. I laid it all on her desk. She looked at me differently then, like she realized I wasn't going to disappear, like I had become inconvenient in a way they couldn't ignore. That night, I slept with the lights on, but I slept because I knew one thing for sure now. He wasn't done, but neither was I. I wish I could tell you that after that second meeting, things got better. That Rachel called me the next day and told me an investigation was underway, that someone above her saw what I saw, that justice was already moving. But that's not what happened. Instead, I waited. Days passed, then weeks, then midterms, still nothing. He was still teaching, still smiling, still quoting feminist theory in his lectures while looking directly at me, still making jokes about power dynamics that the whole class laughed at, still sending emails signed with lines like, "Don't forget that the deepest truths are often the quietest ones." It made me feel insane. I tried to focus on school, but every word felt hollow. I couldn't sit through his lectures anymore. I started skipping class. My grades dropped. I stopped raising my hand. The girl who loved to learn had disappeared, and no one seemed to notice. One night, I went to a student support group. It was held in the basement of the chapel every Wednesday. They called it Voices. Just a circle of chairs. No agenda. You talked if you wanted to. The first time, I said nothing. Just sat and listened. The second time, I said his name. No one gasped. No one acted surprised. A girl across the circle just nodded. Later, she handed me a folded napkin. Inside was a list of 3 names. 2 women, 1 man, former students. She said, "They'll understand." I texted all 3 that night. 2 responded within minutes. We met in a coffee shop off campus. They told me their stories. Almost identical patterns. The invitations. The late-night emails. The private meetings. The same exact phrasing in some of the messages. One of them had gone to Title IX 2 years ago. Another had gone to the dean. Nothing happened. Hearing their stories made me feel both validated and sick, because it meant this wasn't just me, but it also meant this wasn't new, and it hadn't mattered. We started documenting everything, printing emails, comparing texts, making a timeline, cross referencing the semesters, building something undeniable. Then one of them got a letter. Same formatting, same words. Some truths are better left buried. We went back to Title IX together. This time, we asked to speak to someone above Rachel. We waited over an hour. Finally, an administrator met with us. He smiled too much, used words like sensitive, complex, and allegedly. He said it would be reviewed. We left with less hope than before. The next week, I was pulled into a private meeting with a faculty member from my department. She said she wanted to check in, that she'd heard I'd been struggling, that she was worried about me academically. I asked her if she knew about the complaints. She paused, smiled politely, said she wasn't in a position to comment. I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded, said, "Thank you," left her office. Outside, I texted the group. They all know, and no one's going to do anything. That night, we started the blog. We called it The Ones Who Know. We posted our stories anonymously, one by one. We kept names and timelines vague but recognizable. We blurred screenshots of emails. We described how it feels to be groomed by someone who teaches trauma theory for a living. The blog gained traction. Within a week, we had thousands of views. Other students began submitting stories. Some had nothing to do with Dr. Raymond. Some did. Faculty commented anonymously. Alumni emailed us. One of them wrote, "He did the same thing to me in 2008. Still, nothing from the administration. Then, a journalist reached out, said they had seen the blog, asked if we'd speak. We debated it. For days. Then one of us said, "We've already risked everything. Why not say it out loud?" So we did. The article dropped 2 weeks later. It was long, detailed, meticulous. It didn't just mention Dr. Raymond. It named the failures of the university, quoted policies, compared our experiences, called out the patterns. That same day, he went on leave. The email from the university said it was for personal reasons. The next day, the blog crashed from too much traffic. People were talking, in classes, in hallways, in bathrooms, in dorms. And then came the meeting. The university president invited all students to a listening forum. It was held in the auditorium. Microphones on stands, rows of chairs, a stage, and fear. I didn't plan to speak. But when the mic was open, I stood up. My hands were shaking, my voice broke twice. But I told them everything. About the emails, the meetings, the silence, the me who had once loved school, the me who had disappeared, the me who had written everything down because I didn't know where else to put the pain. When I finished, no one clapped. They stood, a standing silence, heavy, reverent, real. It didn't fix anything, not right away, but it opened a door. And sometimes, that's all it takes. When people talk about survival, they make it sound like a finish line, like there's a moment you cross, and everything after that is healing, rebuilding, reclaiming, as if speaking out is the summit, as if being believed is the end. But it's not. The article went viral. Our inbox overflowed with messages, strangers thanking us, sharing their own stories, asking for help. The administration remained mostly silent, but changes began trickling in. New committee panels, a review board, quiet reassignments. Dr. Raymond never returned. Still, there were days I couldn't breathe. People I didn't know would stop me on campus and say, "You're so brave." I'd smile, nod, say thank you. But inside, it felt like they were talking about someone else. some version of me that had survived in ways I hadn't. Because the truth is, survival isn't clean, it's raw, messy. It comes with flashbacks, with nausea, with moments where your hands still shake when you check your email. It comes with nightmares where his voice still says your name, with rooms you can't enter, books you can't read, people you can't trust. But it also comes with fire. One of the girls from the group, we'll call her Maya, started a nonprofit that now provides legal support to students reporting abuse. Another, Jen, went into journalism. She's the one who helped write our story. Me? I started speaking. First to small groups, then larger ones, then panels, conferences, media. Every time I tell the story, people ask the same questions. Why didn't you say something sooner? Why didn't anyone stop him? How could this happen in a university like ours? And the hardest one, what would you say to him now? I never know how to answer that. I've imagined it, of course, standing in front of him, looking him in the eye, saying every word I never got to say. But the thing about abusers is, they don't listen. They rewrite reality to suit their power. So my words were never for him. They were for me. For the girl who walked into his office, not knowing what she was stepping into. For the one who sat silent while he talked about trust, intimacy, power. For the one who froze when he crossed the line and thought it was her fault for not running. For the one who wrote everything down because she had nowhere else to put the pain. I speak for her. And for every other girl who thought she was alone. For every survivor who stayed quiet because the system trained her to. For every whisper that got buried in red tape. For every story that ended before it could begin. I say it now. I believe you. I believe you even when they don't. Even when they call you dramatic. Even when they roll their eyes. Even when the policy says it's not enough. Even when they promote him instead. Especially then. I believe you when you leave the meeting shaking and nothing changes. When the emails keep coming. When the door won't stay shut. When the floor beneath your feet doesn't feel solid anymore. I believe you. Because I lived it. And because belief is the first crack in the silence. Now, years later, I walk through my old campus sometimes. The seminar room is still there. His name isn't. The walls have been painted. The office hours plaque is gone. But I remember. I always will. And when I speak with that memory in my mouth. So that maybe, just maybe, the next girl doesn't have to carry it alone. That's the thing they never tell you about survival. It's not a finish line. It's a door you hold open for someone else. And I'm still holding it open. Even now. Especially now. Because healing isn't a straight line either. Some days, I feel strong enough to face a room full of strangers. Other days, I can't open an email. I still flinch when I hear certain phrases. I still feel my breath catch in my throat when someone stands too close. But then I remember Maya. I remember Jen. I remember the names that appeared in our inbox. The stories we couldn't forget even if we tried. I remember the silence we cracked open together. And I remember the sound that came next. Not applause, not shouting, just the sound of people finally exhaling, of truth being spoken aloud, of rooms no longer afraid of their own echoes. Sometimes, when I stand in front of a crowd and tell my story, I see eyes widen in recognition. Not shock, recognition. A quiet nod. A subtle hand reaching for someone else's. That's how I know the door is still open. That's how I know it was worth it. Because even if no one ever says his name again, they remember ours.